Welcome to Local Leverage, your competitive edge in business. As always, today's show is brought to you by Property Radar, the hyperlocal lead generation platform for small local businesses. Today we're joined by Henish Pulickal, engineer turned investor, founder of CalHomeCo, and one of the most methodical fix and flip investors in Southern California. He's flipped over 130 properties in a market where most investors say there's just no margin left. Today, Henish is here to share his secret sauce, covering everything from high converting seller profiles to neighborhood level targeting to the exact messaging and positioning that makes sellers say yes. Whether your business is thriving or you're just trying to be profitable in a high cost market, this episode is full of battle tested plays that work right now. Henish, welcome to Local Leverage. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm curious. You're down in the San Diego area. I was recently down there for an event, and I was blown away at the number of folks in kind of the investment flipping space that were advertising on TV. I mean, you're in a competitive market, and you're also in a place that a lot of people would think, like, geez, it's really difficult to do business here as an investor, as a flipper, but you're making it work. How are you making that happen?
Yeah, I've had good years, bad years. I've had my challenges and I've had my wins. And so I learned early on that it was probably better to just do maybe 10 flips that make a good amount of profit versus trying to do 100 that might eke by little bits of profit. And it's just the risk reward and the management it takes to do that much volume at a small spread versus just let's get 10, doubles, triples, home runs as opposed to trying to just get singles all day long.
I definitely want to spend some time talking about, your criteria then for how you find and evaluate these properties. Because I mean, I think that's a win for anybody, right? Do less deals, but make more on each one. That's a great recipe.
Correct. Yeah. I've got a couple guys that work with me and they're always trying to sell me on how every deal works. Like, oh, we'll make 30,000. I'm like, but that's just as quick. We could lose 30,000, if it turns a little bit or if we're off by a little bit. So it's too risky to do the thin deals in my perspective.
Yeah. So I'm curious, in San Diego area where you are, and again, very competitive space. It seems like, at least from kind of looking outside in. What does it mean for you to be hyper local? How are you leveraging your personal understanding of the area, your history there, and your local brand to make that serve you best?
Yeah, lots of questions there. I think one, location is the most important part about real estate. And so knowing my neighborhoods, knowing what's going well and what's not going well. And in fact, one of my worst deals that I had was due to a location situation. And so the location got worse after I acquired it, and then it killed my profit on a deal. And that place is Imperial Beach, California. It was always kind of a sketchy place in terms of proximity to Mexico and water quality in the ocean. And then after I bought a property there a few years ago, it got much worse because of a big infrastructure project in Tijuana that killed their sewer systems and made the water 10 times worse. And it destroyed the demand for that city. And so, lesson learned, don't try to bet on a bad location and hope
Yeah.
it'll get better. That was an important thing
What?
to know. And a lot of people wouldn't know that. Even a lot of people in San Diego that aren't in tune with the neighborhoods don't realize that, hey, Imperial Beach is a pretty tough place to be or even visit or especially live right now because of the smells, because of the water quality, and that affects pricing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious, what drew you into that deal? I mean, were you doing deals in that area, or was this something that just looked too good and I had to jump on it?
Yeah, exactly. It was like a 3 unit house that was originally a one unit house, and it was less than half a mile to the ocean, and it was way less than $1 million. And I'm like, win, win, win.
Yeah,
And then it just got hairy from there. And challenges like some cities are a lot more strict on what they require permits for and what they don't. And some of these smaller municipalities within San Diego are a lot more strict, and they have people out there looking for work trucks, and as soon as they see a work truck they'll ask for your permits. And so trying to get permits took forever in a post-COVID world a few years ago. Trying to get the work done, and the inspectors all seem to have a grudge on their shoulders or a chip on their shoulders to say replace more wood, and maybe you need to go through coastal commission, and just everything horrible that could go wrong with a property. But initially the numbers made sense. buy for 800, put in 200, sell for 1.3, you know. And so those numbers had some spread in it and would work, but it turned out to buy for 800, spend 300, spend another 100 extending loans from the hard money lender because it dragged on for more than a year. Then it ended up selling for 1.1, you know, and so that was a
Jeez.
real kick in the butt.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are tough to recover from for sure.
Yep.
So, I mean,
Um,
I guess having gone through some of these now, you're starting to realize, like, which cities or neighborhoods or divisions are going to be most friendly for the type of investments you want to make. What are some of the less obvious signals that you look for to identify kind of flip friendly areas?
the quantity of inventory, days on market are something that I'm looking at a lot more today. Being July 2025, it's been a softer market for the last several months. We've been in a higher interest rate market for the last year or plus, and there's just less demand. The only people that are buying are the people that absolutely need to buy, and so it's something that I look at. And so just yesterday, I was pitched a property. Going back to your earlier question of how do I leverage my location is a lot of times it is reputational too. So I now have a good roster of agents that I know throughout the county that will call me first and sometimes only to discuss their flips or investor properties with. And so I was pitched one yesterday in Ramona, which is kind of a semi-rural community in San Diego. Still a lot of people live there, but it's on the outskirts. And in the community that the agent was pitching me the property called Country Estates, beautiful houses, big lots, nice condition. Everything's 800,000 to a million plus, so nice upper value, still modest in San Diego. But the house that I was looking at needed everything, needed landscaping, needed a half acre of landscaping, and so those aren't cheap projects. And so gone are the days of just paint over every issue and it'll be done. I mean, I started my company having some pride in the work, and I wanted to wear proudly that, hey, this was my house. I remodeled it. I'd let my family or friends move into it. I'm that confident in the quality of the work that we put into it. And so I just can't do the super cheap flip game. So in that case, when I was looking at properties, there was a lot of active inventory. There was high days on market, and even the ones that were pending or sold had been on the market for 1, 2, 3, or more months, which is rare in San Diego in prior years. It's now becoming more common this year. So I just have to adjust my price accordingly to mitigate for that risk.
Are you finding that to be much more challenging right now? I mean, given, like, whether it be tariff or material costs and uncertainties. I mean, I'm talking to a lot of flippers that are talking about minimizing their capital inputs now. They're like saying, I've got to just get tighter. I've got to be more focused on the cosmetics and not going as deep into these kind of rehab projects. Are you doing that, or are you just able to raise the price on the other side enough to make it work?
No, I mean the price that it sells for is the price that it sells for. I can't be aspirational on it. I'm not getting three, five, six buyers like I used to. If we get one buyer at or near list price, that's a win. But I go into it budgeting for the roof, for the furnace, for the windows, for anything that needs to be done. The cosmetic stuff isn't going to work because buyers have options now, and that wasn't the case before. So I've got to make it clean. I've got to make it right because the buyer will go choose something else instead because the house down the street has it all done. And
Yeah.
so I just have to adjust the price. In this house that I was looking at yesterday, maybe it's worth 850, but I want to say conservatively it's worth 800. So after I put 200 or 225 into it, to make at least a $75,000 modest profit, I wouldn't be able to buy it for more than 425 after holding costs and commissions and insurance and utilities. And it sounds like a shockingly low number, but I'm being fair and transparent about the numbers and what it costs to get there, and knowing that, hey, if it drags on longer or if it sells for under 750, I'm breaking even or losing money on this thing.
Right.
And so
Right.
so I have to be cautious on that. And in this case, it turns out it's got a reverse mortgage. Thank you to Property Radar. I can look this up. I could see how much they owe. And I was able to share, hey, I don't think any flipper, even with the thinnest margins, is going to pay more than the balance due on this thing. Incredibly, even reverse mortgages offer short sales. And so we'll have to pursue this as a short sale. The occupants will get some kind of relocation assistance and we'll get the property at a price that makes sense so I can at least make a marginal profit.
That's cool. There's a lot of moving parts in that one and some creativity in how you approach it.
Yeah,
That's great.
absolutely. I mean, you got to learn the tricks when you're done this for a long time because there's ways to make deals work.
Yeah. So in an environment like yours where it's relatively competitive and you've got to move pretty quickly, I assume, how are you going about your assessment of that property, given that you're going to make some pretty significant investments, right? You're talking about HVAC and all these different things. Like, how are you quickly getting through that estimate process so that you can move quickly and close the deal?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm just looking at a property from a desk review, I get an address and saying, "Hey, here's the desk review. I got no pictures, no information." I estimate about $100 a foot is my budget. So if I got 1,800 square foot house, I'm budgeting at $180,000 from it. If it's the roof is good, maybe I take off 15. If the HVAC is good, I'll take off 10. If the windows are good, I'll take off another 10. But if the landscaping needs work, I might have to add 10 or 20, depending
Mhm.
on what it is.
Sure.
So I have that as my baseline, and then I adjust up and down from there based on what I find out about the property after I visit or get some information back.
Yeah. Cool. You mentioned, being in the fortunate position, and I'm sure it's an earned position of having realtors come to you with their deals. Um, what percentage of your deals come through realtor relationships versus you going and finding them?
Yeah, so it's varied over the years, and so since post COVID, I haven't found a good routine just yet, and now I'm developing that right now. So this is kind of fortuitous that we're reconnected and I'm back into it. I spent a lot of time building my construction company as well that I've had now for 7 or 8 years, and now I've got a rock solid construction company that I can say I'm mostly non-operational in. So now I can focus my efforts back on real estate and on the flips because in the past I had averaged 10 to 12 deals a year. In the last few years, I've only been averaging 3 to 5, and now I want to get back up to that 10 to 12. And so I think part of it is just being responsive and then fair with the offers that I'm presenting. And agents know that if and when they're getting the relist, they're going to get a product that they don't have to explain why things weren't done properly,
Right.
right? They can explain why things were done right and have some pride in the property that they're listing, and also know that I'm not doing bait and switch pricing. If I offer X, that's the price I'm sticking with. I'm not going to ask for a 20, 50, $100,000 price reduction on day 9 out of a 10-day escrow, like I hear from a lot of other investors that play that game,
Right.
and they can only play that so many times before their reputation precedes them. So I prevent
Exactly.
doing that. I just come in and I'm okay with getting a no 9 out of 10 times on the offers that I present. But also the agents that present me the offers know that I'm being fair. I'll share my numbers with them. I'll share my spreadsheet with them. And if they want to see it, I'll even share my P&Ls by my third party accountant at the end of it so they can see how much I actually made and how spot on my estimates were.
That's cool. I think all of that speaks to, a quality partnership, that if you're transparent and you're doing good work and being fair about it, then, you know, that's going to set the stage for ongoing business, which is super crazy wise. So, question for you. So, I mean, it sounds like you're wanting to stimulate your lead generation engine or recreate this engine so you can get back to kind of that 10 to 15 transactions a year. When you're looking for off-market properties, what's the profile? Are there certain distress signals that you either like or that you do well in showing up with kind of empathy and with solutions for a certain segment of people?
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. I mean, a lot of it does come from getting data from Property Radar and looking at NTS and NOD properties.
Okay.
Notice of default and notice of trustee sale. Those are the first indications that this person's not making their mortgage payment. They probably have some kind of financial or job issues. I'm assuming there's going to be a fair amount of deferred maintenance on the property, and those are the ones that I target a lot with me and my team. And so those have been kind of my bread and butter. I'm usually doing at least 5 or 6 of those a year. And during the COVID era, that was tough because there was foreclosure moratoriums. But now with people losing their houses again, those are now coming to the top of my bucket of deals that I need to run down and chase. So those are great ones to target, and I try to approach them as kindly as possible because they're going through a challenging time. And so I always try to offer solutions for them and seeing if I can make it a win-win for them before I say, hey, let's sell your house and make the best out of this instead of letting the bank take control of what happens to you and your destiny.
Absolutely. So I'd love to unpack this a little bit more because we was just speaking with somebody the other day about, when somebody's in that situation, they're getting hounded by creditors, they've got people knocking on their doors and calling them all hours. Um, I guess first of all, how are you making contact with these people? How are you breaking through to have a conversation? And with that, how are you showing up to that conversation with empathy so that they're not just like, yeah, get away from me. How
Yeah,
are you getting them to
for
listen?
sure. Yeah, absolutely. You're asking for my secret sauce, and I'll share it. So,
I appreciate it.
we have door knockers that'll go and literally door knock. Business casual, clipboard, show up and knock on the door, and say, "Hey, I'm here to talk to the owner." Hopefully, the owner's there by himself. If they got their kids or family members or something, maybe say, "Hey, this is kind of a personal, urgent business matter. Can we step aside or something like that?" And then typically, I'll introduce myself. My name is so and so. I'm here because I help homeowners that have mortgage problems, and our business records show that you might be having a problem with your mortgage, right? And then they'll say yes or no, or they'll deny it, or whatever the objections are. And I go through scripts with my team about how to overcome those objections so we can at least get them to talk to us and start with their story. And that's what I do. Hey, tell me what happened when you missed your first payment. I'm just creating some empathy and letting them know I'm here to listen and
Yeah.
understand that life happens and you can get a kick in the butt once in a while and things can be difficult and you may not know who to get help from. So I'm trying to create some trust from them that, hey, I'll at least point you in the right direction and seeing if we can accomplish your goals because 9 out of 10 times they want to save their house. And so I'll help them and exhaust all those options. And at least half the time I am able to save their house. But I created some loyalty from them. And guess what? They're going to send me their friends and family and their neighbors when they need to buy or sell a house because I'm a traditional realtor as well. This is just the icing on the cake to be able to flip some houses along the way.
And I love that genuine approach. There's so many folks that are just going to kind of keep pressing, trying to get the deal, but that very authentic approach to let me help, um, I think is great. Uh, Can you give me some examples of ways that you might help somebody, like save the home, or even if you do buy the home to navigate the next step? Like, what are some of those things besides the fast closing and cash transaction that uh, help these people through this process?
Yeah, a lot of times, when they have equity, um, the challenge is they don't have credit anymore. So if I'm saying, okay, now you have to move out of your house that you've lived in for 10 or 15 or sometimes 30 or plus years that they might have inherited from their parents, they don't know where to go. They don't even know the first step of how to find a rental. So now I'm having to help them with that. So the last two guys that I had to deal with just earlier this year, both we got from door knocking pre-foreclosure and they weren't proactively trying to find some place to move. So I set some financial incentives for them to get out, some per diems and things like that. But ultimately, on one of them, I was able to get them a vacation rental because they don't check credit, right? And it was an affordable vacation rental in their part of town in East County, San Diego. And it wasn't too much more than rent for a comparable property, and it came fully furnished because in some of these cases, you get some, slight levels of mental disease or something like that where there's hoarders and their own personal belongings are to be candid, pretty gross. They're covered and they're dirty or they've been eating on the couch and nothing's really worth saving. So having them move into a furnished rental, at least for 2, 3, 4 months to help them transition, try to have them connect with family members as well. That's useful because in some cases they're getting a good chunk of change. And one of these guys, they got $80,000 from me. The other one got over 150. So a fair amount of money, but if you don't manage that properly, that'll be gone quickly. So yeah, a lot of times I am helping them find housing immediately so they can move into it. One, because I want to get into their house and work on it, because by then I've probably already bought it, postponed the foreclosure, whatever it is, to make sure that the bank doesn't foreclose on this property. And yeah, in other cases, maybe have them co-sign with a family member that'll help them get a rental as well, so we can transition them. And every time at the end of these things, it's always satisfying because the homeowners are usually hugging me and saying, "I can't believe you did what you told me you would do, and you were able to help me, and you didn't cheat me at all." And I just try to keep it honest and fair because karma is real.
That's got to feel good. Yeah, that
Yeah,
kind of
for sure.
feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's tough. It's tough because I heard the other stories of, oh yeah, just kick them out and then let them figure it out. It's not my problem, but it
Right.
is kind of my problem because we're all people and we're all neighbors and we're all San Diegans here, and so I don't want to have that on my conscience that I screwed someone over.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this goes back to that, importance of that local presence and brand. I mean, you do
Yep.
that, like I said, you do that a couple times, and that's the reputation you have.
Yep.
So, outside of the trustee sales and kind of notice of default signals, what are some of the other property attributes that you look for, and kind of how are you using data to identify physical properties and structures that meet your buy box?
Um, I'm always checking out properties and I'm always looking at it, depending on who, who I think the buyer avatar is, right? Some houses I'm going to say, yeah, absolutely, this works for an empty nester or a young couple or, whatever it is. And a lot of other houses, it's going to be a perfect fit for a family. And those are the dream houses to have because people that need to buy a house for their family want that house, and if it has a nice yard or if it's in a nice neighborhood or if it's an extra large lot or if it already has a pool or a space for a little basketball court. I mean, those are things that people will pay too much money for when they get that house in that neighborhood. And so I've had those cases as well where, a few months ago, I saw, I had a client that wanted a house in a nice neighborhood in San Diego, in Scripps Ranch. So nice neighborhood, lots of nicer houses, anywhere from $1 to $2 million plus. And he went and checked out the house before I could get there and he said, "Oh, cancel! I can't get this house. It's too much work." And that perked my ears up. And I said, "I love
I can
houses that are
help
too
you.
much work. Let's go. Let's go over there." So if I gave him another chance after I saw it, I was like, "I think this is a dream house." I saw an old dated house in a great neighborhood in a great lot with a lot of great features that I could fix for a couple $100,000. And he was adamant he didn't want it. It seemed too much work for him. But I get it. A lot of people are scared by big construction projects because they've just heard the nightmare stories. But that's why I started a construction company to improve that. So I saw it, and by the time I got to the offering to the agent, she said, "Oh, it's too late. We've already got 16 other offers." And so in this case, I said, "Hey, that's great. If it's okay with you, I'll give you a couple minutes of tips that I've learned working with different investors and buyers over the years. I said, here's things to look out for, and especially the bait and switch pricing. Hey, they might come back to you at the last minute and saying they need $100,000 price drop. If they do, let me know. If you want to cancel out, I'll be right there as a backup buyer." And she already had a dozen backup offers. But she called me 2 days later and she's like, "You were spot on. They did that thing to me and they played that game. And do you want to be the backup buyer?" I'm like, "I'm in. I'll close in 7 days. Let's get this
Absolutely.
done." And now she still pitches me, 4 or 5 deals a year, which is awesome. And so I get to take down one or two of those, including the one that I mentioned to you in Ramona just yesterday. So that went well, and it sold for at least 100, almost $200,000 more than any house in the neighborhood because it had a unique corner lot that was huge, that had a pool, that had a half court basketball, that had a putting green, and all checked all the boxes. And I could see the family in the backyard dreaming of having a little fire pit back there and hanging
Yeah.
out and making
Yeah.
memories with their family. And had 3 or 4 different buyers, and they paid too much for it, and it was awesome. And they're still happy about it. I still get messages from them about how much they love the house. So that worked out well, and I think that's key is to imagine that a family is going to live here and they're going to want this. They don't want that house next to the tire shop. They don't want that house that's next to any kind of commercial influence. They want the house that's next to the park or in a cul-de-sac or in a quiet street. And so I think about that because I have a family. I'm like, what would families like? And I can kind of put myself in that buyer's avatar.
Yeah. Uh, you mentioned the corner lot thing, and it's kind of perked my ears because I know in your area in San Diego, you have one of the maybe looser restrictions around ADUs, and corner lots, of course, can be ideal for that situation. Are you playing in that world, or based on your avatar for your buyer, is that something that you don't tend to focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm doing some myself, within reason, and in some good pockets. And then actually, just my business partner on the construction side, we just bought him a house that already had 2 units on it, house and an ADU, and he's going to be adding 4 more. But it's almost a 10,000 square foot lot. We can check that information on Property Radar. From the maps that I can see it's on an alley. I can check the zoning to
Perfect.
see if it's in one of these bonus ADU zones, right? And these laws have been changing quickly, including most recently a few weeks ago, they've toned back how much ADU projects you can put in a backyard. And so we're still safe in that regard on this property that we just bought for him. And so, yeah, so that'll be a new one. And then on the other side, I've got a property over by SDSU in a town called Rolando that I own with a few friends of mine that we bought together that we're almost done with 8 ADUs in the backyard in that one.
Wow.
And in that case, we didn't, I'm always trying to be conscious of the neighbors in the neighborhood. In that case, none of the other neighbors had a yard that would have accommodated more than one ADU. Or even that would have been difficult because of the terrain and the hills and the slope. So we knew that we wouldn't impact street parking that much to have the 8 because the entire street was available. The entire street was available, so it was comfortably spaced for 20 plus cars at any given time. So even when we were there with our workers with 8 or 10 cars, there was still plenty of street parking available. So we felt a little bit better about that location versus the ones that you hear about in Claremont or Linda Vista, where there's no street parking and they're dropping another 7 or 10 or 12 units in the back with no parking.
Yeah.
And it's challenging because we want to be at a less car dependent city, but we're not there yet. Maybe with these robot cars rolling out and stuff, people can be more dependent on that, but relying on public transportation or Uber for everything is still challenging in San Diego. Even the lowest income earners I know in my network all have cars.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'd imagine too. I mean, if you're plopping in an 8 or a 10 unit ADU in something that's already constricted or compressed in terms of parking, you're going to get into that situation where the neighbors are in an uproar, over it, and this goes right back to then the reputation that you have, like, oh, this is the guy that comes in and destroys the neighborhood, right?
For sure, yeah. So I've been conscious of that, and so I only have a couple small projects in neighborhoods that I think that can accommodate that. In fact, another one of my construction guys, we bought him a house and it was on over half an acre. And at the time when we bought it, you could have put 25, 30 ADUs in the back. Now that he kind of sat on and hemmed and hawed, and now he's maxed out at I think 8. But even then, when we could have done more, we were saying let's just do 14 with 18 parking spots. He had enough space to build the units and the parking spots on his lot, so it wouldn't have impacted the neighborhood, a lot less. So just trying to be thoughtful about that, knowing that it's very aspirational to build all these housing without any parking spots because that's challenging. And so if we can make it happen with the parking and the units, then we're going to do that and try to do it the right way because that's the reality for at least the next several years. I'm looking forward to a less car dependent future in San Diego, but we're not there yet.
Right. Right. Yeah. Let's jump back to kind of your lead generation practices. I mean, it sounds like you got a door knocking crew that is going after these kind of NTS and NOD opportunities. As you're trying to restart this engine and drive more activity, more deal activity this year, how are you going about evaluating which channels to use besides the ones like door knocking that you're already relying on?
Yep, great question. Yeah, so actually later this afternoon, I'm going to try to set some metrics up for my guys because I had a rebrand and I've got a new company that I just rolled out called Pango Homes, Pango, to be just my flipping division. I had a challenge, I think, over the last several years in terms of brand dilution because my company, CalHomeCo, has been construction and real estate, but I think for a lot of clients and for a lot of my network, it was confusing as to what I was doing and who's doing what, and I'm sure I've lost business along the way. So today with Pango, that's just going to be the flip investment division of the company. So I've already got 3 guys working with me on that, and we're going to split it between agent outreach, going to broker caravans, writing offers, and then also door knocking for distressed sellers directly. So I'll set some scorecard metrics for them of how many to hit each day, how many to hit each week, so I can measure, okay, yeah, you wrote 5 offers up today, you reached out to 10 agents, and you also door knocked 10 people, and that's a pretty good day. After a week of that, we should have 2 or 3 or 4 good leads that we can really work on. And so we'll set some scorecards, some metrics. I'll help them with their scripts, their challenges, and help them put their schedules together so they know when to do what and how to break it down and find the events so I can meet agents and network. And part of it is going to be dropping my name because I have been here for a long time. I think I have a decent reputation, and so the goal is that, hey, I'm XYZ person, and I work with Henish over at Pango Homes, and we'd love to get a chance to earn your next flip deal. And so I'm not saying give it to me. We need a flip. Just like, hey, let's give us a chance to earn it and be transparent, and maybe you'll learn something about how we flip houses. I'm happy to share and have a little bit of fun along the way. Make it fun and make it have a nice project that you can relist.
Yeah. I was thinking about your brand earlier. I was kind of reviewing your site, and you got the construction, you've got the realty, you've got buy, sell, you got all these different components, even including like you highlight foreclosure and or pre-foreclosure and helping people through those processes. And so I think to your point, yeah, you run the risk of dilution. At the same time, you also have a very unique value proposition in that you're able to do all of these things. So it's got to be an interesting balance for you to try to figure out how to straddle both, right? How to lead with, I can do all of this for you, but I also can be your specialist in this one area.
Yeah, I think it's been good and bad. We joked when we made our slogan initially is we do that. And now we've been joking about we don't want to do that. Just because we do it just doesn't mean we want to do it. And so I think that's been challenging. And I think that with rare exception, there's people that are exceptional in anything at multiple things. Yeah, there's your Elon Musks that have a bunch of companies, and there's Richard Bransons and stuff. But most people are good at their widget. I just make post-it notes, and I make $1 billion a year doing it. And so it makes more sense to me to be the inch wide and mile deep. And I've always got a beginner's mind about stuff. I'm always ready to learn and get better about it. And I thought initially that having that one brand that does everything makes sense, but now I see the benefit of having representatives that work for me that can be the face of the company. So with my construction company, I've got biz dev people that now people know, oh, these guys, Brian and Will, do construction, and Henish is kind of their CEO and owner, but he's not the guy to call for the estimate or
Right.
to do the site visit and things like that. And same. So now when it comes to consumer facing, when it comes to my friends and family, I just tell them I'm a realtor because it doesn't help them to know that I'm an investor, right? That doesn't help me for them to know that I'm an investor. When I'm meeting agents and other people in the industry, loan officers, attorneys, I tell them I'm an investor because they're less likely to use me as a realtor, but they might consider me when they have a probate deal or they have that fixer and things like that. So now that's how I've rebranded myself is I'm a realtor to my friends and family and I'm an investor to people in the industry. And then the construction company is doing great. We get a good amount of business that way just because we've been treating clients right. And that's been steamrolling into its own beast, which is excellent.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I love it. I'm a believer that I love the concept of having a niche, right? But I'm also a believer that you can have multiple niches, so long as you put enough attention into one and you really dominate that strategy, versus trying to just be diluted across everything. But I think from what I'm hearing, that's kind of the way you're going about it. You're going to really dominate and really get excellent at one thing before spending time spinning up another.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the point is to get good at it and then bring in the right people and the right structure and processes so that someone else is taking care of it and I can be there for the high level decisions. The job of board of directors seems like a dream job to me. I'm looking forward to doing that one day when people are like, "Hey, we want you as an advisor for our multi-billion-dollar company." That'd be great. But let me just get to that point where I could do that with my own companies, and that'd be the goal. So I'd love to elevate some of the people that work with me on the flip side so they're their manager and they can make the decisions and they have some buying authority to some amount of dollars so that we can keep this thing moving. And that'd be the goal. I've been learning a lot about business in various business organizations that I'm part of and peer groups that I'm part of with other business owners and learning from them, learning from the speakers that we bring in and the books that we get to read about how to structure your business so you have a business and not just a job. And so that's what I've been working on. And we've done that really well with the construction company over the last 2 years. So now me and my co-owner don't just have jobs, we feel like we're business owners now, right? And we've got people that are doing the heavy lifting for us. And I'm working on getting that into my real estate and both my investments as well, where I've got people that are doing the heavy lifting. I still will do it because I like to work and I've got strong work ethic, but I want to be able to pass the torch on as much as possible, still retain some ownership and profit of these things and keep the machine moving. but hopefully make the company bigger than me personally, right? I don't want it to just be
Right.
Henish Incorporated. I
Right.
want it to be CalHomeCo by itself. I want it to be Pango by itself.
So how are you approaching that? What are you doing with folks in your organization that you see the opportunity for them to elevate up? Um, how are you helping to develop those individuals, and how are you getting comfortable elevating out and delegating off those responsibilities so that somebody else can take the helm?
Yeah, I mean, some from experience, but then also setting milestones or metrics, right? On the investment side, I was just finalizing my comp plan yesterday, so I said that as they get more deals done, they can get a bigger taste of the profit
Sure.
because ideally they'll be doing more of the lifting on the analysis part, right? Right now they're sending me a property and saying, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you think? You didn't give me the ARV or the rehab amount or anything. You're just asking me to do all the work. Do some more of the work, and then I'll give you some feedback." So as they get comfortable with that, and I'm teaching them how to do it. I'm not saying,
Right.
go kick rocks. I'm like, "Here's exactly how to do this. I'll teach you for an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, whatever it takes, so you know how to crunch the numbers and see how I look at the numbers." Um, and so that they can take on more of the heavy lifting and say, okay, I've reviewed 10 deals and this one is a winner. Let's dig into this further. I need your help. Right. Instead of sending me 10 deals and saying, Hennis, you review all 10 of these deals and tell me which one works. Right. And
Right.
that's a little bit more challenging. Right.
Right.
Because if someone's saying, hey, let's buy this house, it's worth $1 million, we have to pay 800 for it. I'm like, that doesn't work because I have to put 150 into it. By the time you pay holding costs and closing costs and commissions, there's nothing left.
Yeah.
And so now I'm just kind of teaching them that, what spreads work at the basic level, and then to verify it in a 1 minute spreadsheet that you plug in a few numbers and see if it's close. And if it's close, now we can drill it.
Yeah.
So, I think teaching people how to do it is the first step, and then as they get volume, then I'll give them more responsibility and a bigger chunk of the profit, and let them run it because they see the value that I'm providing, and then they're getting more effective at what they're doing for their lead generation.
Are you doing that in a structured way? In other words, are you communicating to those folks like, you know, hey, I see potential here and I see the opportunity for you to elevate, and here's what that progression looks like? Or are you just letting it happen more organically? And
No, I've written it down, and yeah, past in the day, I'm like, yeah, let's just feel it out. But now people like to know what their goals are. And so I try to set that for them. Hey, let's get to X, and then I'm going to shift you up to this. And then when you get to the next X plus 5, you're now at this. And so I lay it out for them because I want to have those metrics and those scorecards and those goals for them to achieve to, right? And then set those smart goals. I want them to be measurable and realistic and timely. And so make it so that they can do it and hold them accountable to it. And so I think a lot of people join real estate and want to become an investor because they think that they're going to be an entrepreneur and become a millionaire the first year. But then they quickly realize that having a headshot on social media doesn't get you business, right? You've got to do the work. And so in some cases, I have to teach people what that work is, which is reaching out to people, reaching out to agents, reaching out to sellers, reaching out to homeowners, and having those conversations. So I'm understanding that better too as I've gotten into this business now for 20 plus years, and so now trying to pass that on to people and teach them, hey, if you've got the work ethic, I'll tell you how to do it and then how to elevate from there. But I am making it transparent of what it takes to get to the next level, so that they know that they still have to learn a lot, right? And I think they feel that as I'm reviewing properties with them, they're like, crap, I didn't think of all of those things that you just mentioned. I was like, no problem. That's why we're practicing this together. So you get into it, so you can think of those extra variables that I thought of, right? One of the houses I was pitched yesterday was one door away from the highway, and he wanted to give it highest in neighborhood value. I'm like, it's not going to be the highest in the neighborhood. You're next to the 5 highway. That's a very loud place. You can't hear your friend if they're right next to you talking to you in the backyard. You'll probably hear that in the inside of your house too, and that's going to deter 80 to 90% of buyers. So you got to do at least a 10% haircut off that ARV.
yep, really appreciate your approach on kind of the realism of what it takes to be successful here. I mean, there's so many folks, and I'm really just over the whole get rich quick guru thing. There's so many of them in this industry, and I like the straight talk. Like, hey, there's a methodical way to do this, but it takes work. It's not just sign up and you're going to be a millionaire. That's not how it
Right.
goes. Yeah. So which leads us to, you just recently, maybe think recently, just started up an event series of deal or no deal, where you have folks come in and you help them evaluate the potential on opportunities. I'm curious, one, what led you to start that, and two, maybe you could give us a little bit of insight into your process for evaluating a deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll have to give all the credit to Jorge, my marketing media manager. And so he came up with that idea and said, hey, let's have an event where people get to pitch properties and discuss it, because I think he saw me analyze properties, and he's like, even him as an experienced realtor for 5 6 years, as my media manager, was like, I didn't think of all these different angles that you do when you're looking at a property. And so he's like, I bet you people would appreciate that. And so from the first event, maybe 7 8 months ago now, had really good feedback, and it was interesting to see people in my audience here, 20 or so at a given time, have notepads with them, which is always great, because usually people just show up with phones, and then have people tell me, I took pages of notes, I couldn't even keep up, and I learned so much. So that
It's
was really
awesome.
gratifying, and saying, okay, cool, I'm glad that people are getting value out of it in terms of learning how to look at properties. And candidly, it's mostly no deal or no deal, because there's very few good deals walked away. And so
Yeah.
sometimes we get a little after action report of someone after someone buys a property, and get the little rundown of how they found it and what those numbers look like, because those are good case studies. A lot of times, if we're just reviewing deals that are kicked down to us from a wholesaler, well, those deals have no spread, and so I can show them 10 different ways of how it's going to lose money, and then people will see that. But we do look at the maps. I'll look at the satellite view from Google Earth. I'm looking at property radar, taking a look at anything that's on there, any liens or something like, hey, is this going to be a short sale? Is there another way we can structure this? Or could I buy this potentially subject to, because they are in default? And I've done that a lot, where I just pay the reinstatement and give them some cash extra to have a grant deed signed over. Is there a seller carry option that we can finagle out of this, because they have enough equity and maybe they don't need all the cash today, and I can pay them in 4 or 5 months when I'm done with the property? So there's different ways I could try to make the dollar stretch, and it's useful to have the visibility into the property and the liens on property radar to be able to see if there's alternate solutions that are potential.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I can appreciate the no deal or no deal. I mean, there's very few that work, and to your point, like if it's coming through the wholesale channel, more and more the wholesalers are taking such a big piece of the potential profit out of it that it's hard to make it work. For those that become a deal or that make sense as a deal, maybe we should have an add-on series, which is how did you source this, right? And start to figure out what are the most effective ways of finding these off-market properties, and not relying on either the realtor or on the wholesaler.
Of course, yeah, and that's what I end up doing, is that at every session that we have, I might have 15 or 20 properties to review, but then I'll throw in a couple of my own and share those details of how I got it, what the numbers were, how they turned out, and why it worked. Just so it's not so discouraging. When people are like, hey, we reviewed 15 deals and none of them are deals. I'm like, yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
what happens when you try to buy a house for 600, it's worth 800. There's no deal
right,
there, you know.
right.
And so that's kind of tricky. So yeah, I do give them a little bit of the good with the bad, but I'm also doing it to prevent people from making the same errors that I have of overpaying for a property. The handful of properties that I've bought from wholesalers ended up losing some money. Some a little, some a lot, but every property that I got from an agent or from my own sources, direct to door knocking, checking the NOD lists and stuff, have all turned out to be profitable. And so it's my lesson learned, is that, hey, be extra, extra cautious when we're looking at a deal from a wholesaler. And I've heard the only other way to potentially work it is counteroffer. If they're saying, hey, pay 600 for this house, it's worth 800, and the real number is five, well, I'll push back and say five, and maybe they can negotiate the seller to 480 and they make a 20K fee, and maybe then that's a win-win. But it's tough, and that's why that wholesalers are always putting out bandit signs looking for new investors, because they want that rookie investor that's caught up on the dream of flipping houses like they see on TV.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, give credit where credit's due. One of the things I, applaud the wholesaler for is that they are committed to doing effective lead generation and aren't afraid to
I
go out
agree.
and do that work. And oftentimes when I'm working with, flippers and others, I'm saying, let's take a page from this book. Let's not be reliant on that channel entirely. Let's go out and source our own opportunities.
Right, absolutely. No, and I agree with you. I mean, there's no shortage of work ethic with good wholesale because they're cranking it out and they're working and they're sending the messages and they're doing the door knocking. So I applaud them on that. So no disrespect there, but one of the
Yeah,
things
no,
I don't like is the lack of transparency. And that's one thing that I think
agreed.
is different than a good investor and realtor versus a good wholesaler. Is they're always kind of fudging the numbers a little bit to try to make the deal work. When that's why as the guy that's putting the money up, I've got to be a little bit more diligent and do my own due diligence.
Yep. Henish, thank you so much for showing up and just sharing the sauce, as you said, and getting tactical. I think this is a really beneficial conversation for our listeners and great takeaways. And I hope that folks connect with you and follow you. There's a lot to learn through the series you put together. And how can people get in touch with you or get more of your content?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I should be easy to find. I've got a unique name, so if you type in Henish Pulickal anywhere, you should find me. But my company's CalHomeCo, and so that's easy to find on Instagram, social media, LinkedIn, on my website, any of those things. And yeah, reach out to me in any of those means. Either myself or one of my assistants will see that message and get back to you. But yeah, would be happy to connect with other realtors that are looking to join a team that's more supportive and can be helpful. That's always great. If you've got a deal that you're looking at, you want me to take a look at it and see if it's a deal for me, or if I can give you some feedback, that'd be great as well. So yeah, those are easy ways to get a hold of me. I'm around. I'm a pseudo public figure here in San Diego, so let's easy to find me. If you got deals in somewhere else, I'm less interested, but I'm still happy to have that conversation.
Fantastic. And if you found value in this conversation, make sure you hit the subscribe button, share this with a friend or colleague that can also get value from it. Henish, thank you very much, and congratulations on all your success.
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate it.